It was one of the first times, maybe the first time, I was ever home alone overnight. I must have been somewhere between 13 and 15. Not exactly a little kid, but still very much in that in-between stage where you're brave in theory, but still kind of terrified of the basement. My parents were out of town for the night, and I stayed back. I don't remember why. Maybe I had school stuff. Maybe I just wanted to prove I could handle it. I decided to sleep in their bedroom, mostly because their bed was way comfier, and they had a TV in there. It was on the first floor, just off the front of the house. Pretty standard old farmhouse layout. We lived in a rural area. I mean really rural. No streetlights, no sidewalks, no neighbors yelling at their kids, just open land. Cornfields stretched out behind our property as far as the eye could see, broken only by a narrow patch of woods that backed up against our lot. Our neighbors were both older couples, quiet and harmless, one set to the left and the other to the right. Across the road, maybe 100 feet or so, and a 2-lane blacktop away, was this tiny church, the kind that only had services on Sundays and maybe a potluck on Wednesdays. I think their congregation had like 20 or 30 people at the most, that kind of small. The properties were spread out. Everyone had at least an acre of land, so while we had neighbors, it wasn't like you could hear them sneeze or anything. The kind of place where the night gets really quiet. So quiet that your ears start playing tricks on you. The only thing that might cut through the stillness was the occasional coyote in the field or a semi on the main highway barreling down at 1 a.m. We shared a driveway with our neighbor on the right. My parents left one of the cars in it, which, now that I think about it, probably made the house look occupied. We didn't have any lights on, and it wasn't immediately obvious that I was alone, which made what happened even weirder. It was late, like late. I don't remember if I was already awake, maybe watching something on mute, maybe just lying there trying to sleep, or if it was the sound that woke me up. But I remember the moment I heard it. Whistling, right next to the bedroom window. Now, their bed was positioned directly underneath this wide, low window that faced out the side of the house. Outside the window was a strip of landscaping, not just grass, but thick shrubbery, ivory, and some overgrown bushes that hadn't seen proper maintenance in years. The kind of thing you'd really have to push through to get up against the house. The whistling was strange. It wasn't a song I recognized, but it didn't feel aimless either. Not that bored, tuneless kind of whistle people do when they're killing time, no. This was slow, deliberate, almost melodic, and oddly beautiful in a way that made it worse, not better. What really stuck with me was how close it was. It wasn't drifting across the yard or even the driveway. It was right there, on the other side of the wall. Like, if I stood up and opened the blinds, I'd have been face to face with whoever it was. But I didn't hear any footsteps, no rustling, no crunch of leaves or twigs. That always bothered me. The patch of ground outside the window wasn't easy to walk through either, especially in the dark. You'd expect to hear something. Snapping branches, shifting dirt, anything. But it was just whistling. Moving slowly back and forth, as if whoever it was pacing or circling the house. I didn't even breathe, I just lay there frozen, listening. Eventually, the sound drifted off toward the front of the house. I waited. I don't know how long I waited, long enough that my heart stopped pounding quite so loud in my ears. Then I got up, crept through the house, and made sure all the doors were locked. We usually didn't lock them. Almost nobody did. This wasn't suburbia or even a real town. People out here didn't just walk through yards at night, not unless they wanted to risk being greeted by a shotgun barrel. I grabbed the biggest kitchen knife I could find and went back to bed, fully clothed, knife under the blankets, hiding under the covers like that would help if things went south. I think I dozed off at some point, but I know for a fact I didn't sleep until the sun started to come up. I kept waiting for a scream, a knock on the door, something, but it never came. Just silence again. The house was old, over 100 years, creaky and full of weird sounds. And I'd grown up there, spent countless nights in it before and after that, alone and otherwise. But I never experienced anything quite like that again. Sure, there were weird things in childhood, odd dreams, things I thought I saw in the corner of my eye, weird little moments where the lines between imagination and reality was blurred. But I can write those things off. That's just being a kid. This wasn't that. Even at the time, I kept telling myself there had to be an explanation. Someone lost, a stranger cutting through the yard for whatever reason, maybe a neighbor just being weird, just something I could explain, and then I could forget about. But even now, years later, the memory still sticks, crisp and undistorted. A grown adult whispering softly outside a dark bedroom window at 2 a.m, in the middle of nowhere. There has to be a logical reason for that, right? I used to work for a small home improvement retail store when I was a teenager. You know the kind. Flickering fluorescent lights, aisles that always smelled faintly of fertilizer and despair, a break room that hadn't been cleaned since 1983. I'd go there straight after my college classes. This was just a part-time gig, usually 4 to 8 p.m. Sometimes, though, I'd get slapped with a closing shift and end up staying until 10 p.m. Anyway, on one of those late nights, I was restocking nails or screws or whatever was in my department, which was tucked in the farthest, least monitored corner of the store, when this redhead who worked the registers walked up to me. She looked tired, a little anxious, but trying not to show it. She said she needed to do returns, you know, the random crap customers change their minds about, and asked me point blank if I would walk with her while she put the stuff back. So, idiot white knight that I am, I said sure. I asked her why she needed me to tag along. She glanced over her shoulder before telling me there was this older guy, maybe early 50s, who'd been following her around the store all day. Not just once or twice, but all day, like 6 or 7 different times. He'd find her, flirting, lingering way too close, giving off that vibe, you know that one, like if you spoke to him too loudly he might snap, but if you didn't speak at all, he'd think you were inviting him in. She had already told security, but that didn't matter. The guy was basically an animated bread loaf in uniform. I once saw him fall asleep standing up. He said he'd look into it, but apparently couldn't even find the guy despite him waltzing in multiple times. We start walking the store and I'm trying to make casual small talk, to keep the mood light. And that's when I notice someone. About 20 feet away, half shadowed by an end cap and the lumber racks, just standing there. Watching. He was exactly how she'd described. Mid to late 50s, but built, like prison jacked. He was taller than me by a few inches, and just intense. When our eyes met, it was like I'd stepped into a landmine. He stared at me with his expression, not just anger, but betrayal, like I was cheating with his wife, even though we'd literally just met. He didn't move, didn't blink, just trembled slightly, chest rising and falling like he was barely keeping it together. I honestly thought he was just going to come charging at me, right there between the seasonal lighting and the toilet flanges. But somehow I found it in me to square up just enough and said, "Can I help you, sir? We're just about closing here." My voice cracked a little halfway through, but I held eye contact. I guess that was enough, because he took a step back, then another, then eventually slipped out of my sight without saying a word. The girl looked at me with this half smile, half shiver, the expression that says, "Yeah, that was him." We didn't talk much after that, just quietly finished the rest of the returns and went our separate ways. When my shift finally ended, I walked out into the parking lot. It was dark, half the lights broken as always. There was only a few cars left, all parked in the employee row near the entrance, except for one, way off in the distance, just sitting there, still. I couldn't tell if anyone was inside, but I just remember standing next to my own car, pretending to check my phone. trying to decide whether to get in or to go call someone. Eventually, I got in, locked the doors immediately, and drove off. The next day, the redhead came in long enough to tell me that the guy had tried to follow her home. She noticed him in her rearview mirror. Same car, same guy. She only lost him by turning into random side streets at the last possible second. She quit not long after that, and I can't blame her. I never saw her again after that. Never saw him again either. I wish I could remember her name. She was just someone I worked a handful of shifts with, and then poof, gone. We lived in a rather small city, though. Small enough that this kind of thing wasn't common, so I'm almost certain this guy wasn't from around here. Just some drifter creep who fixated on the wrong person and then vanished just as quickly. Still, sometimes even now, I'll be walking through a big box store late at night, half empty, quiet as a grave, and I will catch a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye, and wonder just for a second if he ever really left. So this story is about a guy I used to work with, Mark. He was the night security guard at this old manufacturing plant on the outskirts of town. You know the type of place. Long, empty hallways, creaky floors. Some of the sections looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. It was the kind of spot that gave off that weird, eerie vibe even during the day. Mark had been working the overnight shift for about a month. His routine was pretty simple. He'd do his standard rounds, check the doors, log anything unusual, that kind of thing. Nothing weird ever happened at first. Just the usual silence, shadows, occasional creaks that come with an old building. But after a while, his coworkers started noticing some strange things on the cameras. Sometimes Mark would show up wandering through parts of the factory he wasn't supposed to be in. Like these security storage rooms. They'd been locked and empty for years. At first, people just figured he was killing time or exploring. I mean, if you're going to be stuck in a giant building overnight, who wouldn't get curious? Then one night, things went from strange to downright unsettling. Mark didn't clock out. He just disappeared. Nobody saw him leave. The factory was locked up like a vault. When the morning crew came in, his locker was untouched. His stuff all there. Wallet, keys, everything. It's like he just vanished into thin air. But here's the real kicker. The security footage showed him still walking around the factory floors, hours after his shift was supposed to be over. I'm talking well past the time anyone expected him to be there. And it wasn't just some blurry, grainy video. This was crystal clear. You could see him wandering down empty hallways, walking through locked doors, which makes no sense. Sometimes stopping and just staring straight into the camera like he was aware of him being watched. The police got involved, combed through the whole place, but never found a trace of Mark. No sign, no clue, nothing. After that, rumors started flying around. Some said Mark got trapped inside the building somehow, that the place itself refused to let him leave. I don't know if you believe any of that kind of thing. But on the nights I worked security there, I swear I could hear footsteps behind me. Always just out of sight. Some of the other guards claimed they saw shadows moving through the factory, pacing endlessly, like it was waiting for something, or someone. And Mark? He's never been found. And honestly, I don't think anyone really expects that to change.